Breaking news tonight. James Comey's indicted. But before we get to that, we've got a guest. We're going to talk about cults. The stake starts now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Stakes. I'm Tara Setmayer. My co-founder and co-host, Michelle Kinney, has the night off tonight, so it's just us and our guest and breaking news, apparently. I just saw before we came on the show tonight that the Justice Department has in fact done Trump's bidding and gone after James Comey, former FBI director, and indicted him on some bullshit charges. I'm going to get into that. I have some thoughts. We saw this coming down the pike yesterday. It was pretty much telegraphed that this was what was going to happen. I'm going to talk about that in the second half of the show tonight. So stay tuned because I have thoughts, as I'm sure you can imagine. But before we get into that, there's also some other news going on. Pete Hegseth is calling a bunch of generals and flag officers from like across the entire military to some secret meeting in Washington. I'm going to talk about that. What the hell is that about? There's a war on women. If you haven't noticed, they're back. They're coming for us again. There was a little bit of a lull for a couple months there, but no, they're back coming for us. Anybody who saw Donald Trump's insane presser on Monday knows that this BS with Tylenol and autism and pregnancy, it's just the beginning. It is just the beginning. There's more news coming out about women's health and what this administration is coming for us on. And we need to inform you guys so everyone is aware of what's happening so we can push back. And there's going to be a couple bright spots because I've decided that all this doom and gloom, we can't have it. We cannot have all this doom and gloom. We cannot function like this. We've got to find some joy and bright spots in our lives. So I'm going to ask the folks in the comments tonight, too, if you have a story or you have something bright that you want to talk about, put it in the chat. Because at the end of the show, I'm going to pick one along with a couple bright spot stories that I have that to help us end on a positive note. So, but without further ado, I want to bring in tonight's guest because we're going to talk about Charlie Kirk and Christian dominionism and the truth about what Turning Point USA is doing. I know for many months, a lot of you guys in the chat have asked us to bring on Dr. Stephen Hassan. He's a cult expert, one of the most world-renowned cult experts. And so we listened and we are bringing to you tonight Dr. Stephen Hassan.
Thank you so much, Tara. It's a pleasure to be with you again. And
yes.
Let me tell you, we need to keep our spirits up and not just the doom and gloom that they want us to like give up and just surrender. And I say when we're threatened, we can fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is like giving in and joining the evil.
Right.
You gotta fight.
Yes.
But fight with love, not with weapons. And there's more of us than them. And we're on the side of light and goodness.
Absolutely. I could not have said that better myself. I often say that truth is my sword. And, you know, the proverbial fight that we are in, our weapons are truth. Our weapons are our ability to have compassion for one another and our desire to see our country thrive. You know, we are not motivated by vengeance and hatred. At least I would hope not. Now, we can avenge. I think that's different. That's a different thing as a Marvel Avengers fan. Avenging what has happened to our country and what Trump and MAGA is doing to us on a daily basis, I think comes from a different place. I think it comes from a positive place as opposed to a place of vengeance. But you know, it's important for people, I think, to remember that there has to be balance. Part of the authoritarian tactics, as you know, it is to exhaust people. You know, I call it the fire hose of fuckery. And so, you know, it's a fire hose of fuckery every day. And people they want to wear you down. And we've shown incredible resilience, at least our side so far in the face of something unprecedented. We really have not seen what we're going through in this country in the last 9 months since Donald Trump took the oath of office, we've never really seen it in our country. We've seen it other places. We've read about it in history books, but this country really hasn't been prepared. We tried, lots of us tried to warn. I know I did, you did. There are a lot of us that tried to warn. But, a hard head makes for a soft behind, as my husband's family says down south.
Well, let me jump in, Tara, and just say I became a cult expert because I did get hacked and I got radicalized into a right-wing fascist cult, the Moonies, who are still players to this day. And the Moonies paid Donald Trump $2.5 million to endorse them a few weeks after the January 6th violent insurrection.
Crazy.
And I became a whistleblower after my deprogramming in 1976. But I was in the room with Sun Myung Moon when he said, we're infiltrating the government, that God doesn't like democracy. We need a theocracy. And so I've been telling people our minds can get hacked. And unfortunately, a lot of people have not listened and learned the lesson. And what we're seeing now, though, because of digital media, and COVID accelerated it, unprecedented mind control being done at us at scale.
I think when people hear that, they think, what do you mean mind control? I mean, you wrote the book, The Cult of Trump. People have been calling it a cult for some time. I called it a cult in 2018 and got into a rather epic fight with Meghan McCain on air during one of my co-hosting duties at The View. And I was unapologetic about it because it just feels like there is some type of organized effort going on with people, and they're just it seems irrational support for Donald Trump. But you have studied this, and you have a model that you often use as a teaching tool. Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So let me just state that there's a lot of influence, but one of the tools is I call the influence continuum that helps people understand there's ethical influence and there's unethical mind control influence. Ethical influence, you have informed consent, respect for your authentic self, conscience, critical thinking. You can read whatever you want to read. Basic human rights, women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, indigenous rights. And on mind control, I talk about as behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control that's aimed at creating a new identity that's dependent and obedient on the leader, the doctrine, or the group. So Steve Hassan from Flushing, Queens, and I grew up 1.3 miles from Donald Trump's childhood home, I'll just throw in there. So I knew he was a jerk my entire life as a New Yorker.
Yes, I'm from Jersey. I say the same thing.
So when I was asked by Simon & Schuster to do The Cult of Trump, I knew he was a malignant narcissist, which is the characterization that Erich Fromm did of Adolf Hitler, and happens to be the stereotypical profile of all cult leaders. But I didn't understand that the cult of Trump had authoritarian cults in it that were influencing Trump and were bringing their tens of millions of followers. That's what I learned when I was researching the book. And what I want your listeners to understand is that there's a lot of mischaracterization that Trump has evangelical Christians. And evangelical Christians are like, this is not Jesus's teachings. This is something completely made up where people are claiming to be apostles and prophets who speak to God. And they say that Trump won the 2020 election, but they're controlling their members as digital warriors. And they've basically demonized all of the opposition. They think they're fighting Satan and demons.
This is something that our good friend Denver Riggleman, he's also a senior advisor for us at Seneca Project. And like I said, my very good friend, he talks about this all the time because he grew up Mormon. And so he's not practicing anymore, but he also in his area of expertise and intelligence and stuff, he's studied a lot of extremism, and he's been like screaming from the rooftops for years that there is this holy war underpinning of everything that is driving a lot of MAGA, and that you have if you don't understand that framing, you're not understanding what you're up against. And this is
Exactly.
right, this is basically what you're talking about too with the evangelical movement and this whole Christian dominionism. A lot of folks have no idea about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and their role in this, in something called the Seven Mountains Mandate.
Right,
Can you
Lance.
tell us what that's about?
Yeah, Lance Wallnow. So, unlike Christians who follow Jesus, and Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," or "Render unto Caesar what Caesar," like stay out of politics.
Hmm.
These are people who have a political mindset and they want to take over the world and run the world. They say for God, but it's really for themselves.
Mhm.
And so they talk about seven mountains: family, religion, business, media, and I'll add Mark Burnett, The Apprentice, and he does Shark Tank and all kinds of other things. He's the head of media for the Seven Mountain Dominionists, right? But the idea here is
That's
take over the government, get rid of the separation of church and state, and impose your view of reality on everyone else. And basically, if you're not going to join them, then you're worthless to them.
Yep.
And so the mindset is, and this we see this with RFK and such. They're setting us up for millions of people dying
I
because they're not getting the health care they're going to need.
Right, and I'm gonna talk about that in the later part of the show about what's happening with women's healthcare, what's going on with the government shutdown, what the big beautiful betrayal, as we call it, is actually doing, and
Yeah.
you couple that with Donald Trump and RFK Jr. and what HHS and the CDC have become now with this quackery and junk science. It's gonna get people killed, and it's and I said this during COVID because I started calling them the cult in 2018. And then during COVID, I was like, it's now a death cult. And people thought
Yeah.
that was hyperbolic. Well, fast forward 5 years. Are we wrong?
Not at all. And I've pretty much been censored by the media. I've been in the media for 40 plus years. Every cult story, I'd be on CNN, MSNBC,
Mhm.
etc. But when the book came out, The Cult of Trump, my publicist at Simon and Schuster, I said, "What's up?" Everyone wanted to interview me, and now it's crickets. What's up? She said, "Well, I have a friend in TV production." She said, "If Stephen Hassan wants to talk about the Attorney General of the United States of America being a member of a cult and thinks he can get on TV, he's got another thing coming for him." She didn't say if Steve Hassan wants to say the president of the United States, which I
Right.
thought was interesting. But people need to learn about Opus Dei
Yeah, I was gonna
because
ask you.
they are the big funders of the takeover of our Supreme Court and the Heritage Foundation Project 2025. And they have been preaching that the popes are satanic because they abandoned the Latin Mass. And they're being charged right now for trafficking
Ye
young girls, but labor
Mhm.
trafficking.
Mhm.
And what I really want people to understand is we really need to protect our mind and be in our mind, be in our body, and look to trustworthy sources for information and not allow ourselves to get too overloaded where we're going to be, losing hope.
Right.
There's so much more of us and we have so many more resources than they have. However, we have to be smart and we have to get our messaging better. So because the government defunding is happening in a few more days, it's going to be critical that everyone who understands psychological warfare, they're going to blame the Democrats for not funding, and we have to say, no, it's the Republicans who've taken away our health care, and Americans want their health care. And
Yep.
we are fighting for Americans' health care. We have to
Right.
stay on
Keep it
message.
simple and keep it simple. You know, all the stories are starting to come out about some of the economic hardships people are going through, particularly in areas that have a lot of federal workers.
Right,
And, you know, across the country, people don't realize that the majority of the federal government is actually outside of Washington.
right.
And all of these people, from the Doge cuts and all of that, there come September 30th. That's the end of the federal fiscal year. A lot
Yeah.
of those people, that's their last paycheck. And you know, the stories are starting to come out about where this is having a cascading effect. And I tweeted today, I said, Republicans are responsible for this American carnage. This is on them. It is on them. But I want to get back to the Opus Dei and Charlie Kirk and what's happening with
Sure.
Turning Point, because you know, the coverage of Charlie Kirk was just ad nauseum about what a Christian he is. And oh my gosh, he was just this college debater who believed in free
And I
speech.
loved your
And
video that you put together of his excerpts,
oh
man.
yeah,
That was
that's
great.
all. That was all Michelle. She put that video together. She's also really well versed on the Opus Dei aspect of this. She brings it up all the time
Mhm.
because we pay attention to
Right.
what's happening with the JD Vances of the world and the people where how Opus Dei has had an undue influence in this particular government that people have no idea about. And the
Right.
Charlie Kirk stuff was, you know, again, Turning Point has turned into a juggernaut. And it
Well, then,
started with this whole Seven Mountains mandate with Charlie Kirk. And you mentioned the guy, was it Wallenow? What's his name?
yeah,
Out in
Lance
California?
Wallnaus
Yeah,
was
out
the
in
first
California.
one who espoused this. But I want to, if I may, Tara,
Yeah.
just say person to person influence is what I'm recommending. Everyone has somebody in their family, friendship group,
Hmm.
coworkers who are MAGA, and stop trying to argue with them and use facts and logic, but just build a warm relationship or rebuild it and ask them, what do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about? And if you knew them before they got radicalized, you know which points to ask them about. Because this is the moment where I believe we could get a third of the MAGA base out of the cult of Trump. But it's not going to be digital messaging, it's going to be person to person warmth.
I think that's a good message because, like we said, the other side has been working very hard for decades. The Leonard Leos of the world, who's a billionaire, that's an Opus Dei guy. Others who have funded Charlie Kirk and Turning Point. He found a niche there to get the
Yeah.
younger generation and using this whole. We're seeing kind of a revival in evangelical Christians in the younger generations, but they're being fed this very what I would consider, because I grew up in a non-denominational evangelical church, and to see what's happened there has been one of the greatest tragedies as far as I'm concerned. Their hypocrisy is unspeakable.
So if
But
I may,
how can people combat that? Because it feels like this is an overwhelming movement.
so they're manipulating the media. Information control is the eye of the bite model. But here's what we're not underutilizing: former members.
Mm,
There are so many, like you mentioned, Denver, who's a friend. I
yes.
interviewed him about his book and etc.
Yes. Just
I
so people
actually,
know what we have on the screen. It's
yeah,
the BITE model, which stands
behavior
for
control,
behavior information, right?
information, thought, and emotional control. If you want to control minds, control these four components. And but the key thing is former members, people who are raised in it and now realize how they were taught lies. And I
Mhm.
want to do a shout out from my friend Monty Mader. Have you interviewed her yet,
Not
Tara?
yet, no.
She was raised on a cattle farm, I think in Wyoming, was beaten as a child, had to memorize the Bible. The woman is just brilliant, and she knows the Bible like better than most ministers by heart. And she's got, I don't know, 1.8 million people on Instagram now,
Oh,
but
wow.
she knows how she's really deconstructed how she was raised as a person, and
Mhm.
she's more effective. It's better to listen to former members say, hey, this is what I was taught. This is why it's a lie.
Yeah.
This is what they're saying. Let me read you what the Bible says. Bum, bum,
Right.
bum, 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 bum,
Well,
bum,
that's
bum.
me as a former Republican, right? I
Exactly.
know what it used to be, and I can tell you how it got perverted. It's the same
So
thing.
former Mormons, former Opus Dei, former, former of all of these extremist groups. And I'll just because we haven't talked in a while, Tara, what I say to people that I'm been asked to counsel who are in either Jewish, Christian, or Muslim cults, I say we all share the Garden of Eden story. And
Hmm.
however you want to understand it, Almighty God did not brainwash Adam and Eve to be robots.
Right.
There was choice.
Free will.
God wants us to follow out of faith, not out of coercion. So if you're being coerced, then you're not allowed to think for yourself and listen to other points of view, especially
Mhm.
from people who know their stuff. Then you have to realize this is not godly if you think you're in a Christian thing. No, 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 no. This
That's
is
right.
the other
Well,
force.
right, the Bible talks about having relationship with God and not having, don't bear witness to false idols, like, all of those
Exactly.
things, but they pick and choose. They pick and choose those
And the
things.
false prophets and the
That's right.
antichrist.
That's right.
Whoops, whoops.
Right, even the very elect, right, will be deceived. It's speaking of that, the Antichrist, I don't know if you saw, just kind of as an aside, that Peter Thiel is out here saying that if you regulate AI, that it will usher in the Antichrist, which is just, like, nuts. Because again, I
Yeah,
think this goes to your information part of your bite model.
exactly. Peter Thiel put Vance in place, Musk, Zuckerberg, etc. They have their own ideology that's
Mhm.
at odds with the Christian nationalist, dominionist people, by the way. They don't want any government control. They want to rule the world.
Right, network states.
Net exactly.
Yes,
Curtis
Curtis Yarvin.
Yarvin, etc. So, but the thing is that people, if you understand what's happening, that it's very methodical, it loses its power when you realize Trump is always projecting what he's doing bad
Yep.
onto the other. Then you can label it, and it loses its effectiveness. And people are really, a lot of people are having doubts. That's why I want people to have warm, hey, I miss you. I want you back in my life. We can agree not to talk politics, but I'm really curious. What do you think?
I think those tools are really, really important for people. And, you have a kit on your website basically for people they can download. There's an opportunity for counseling on this if there are people that they want that they're concerned about, almost like, a gambling hotline. If you're a gambler, if you're addicted, call here. If there's someone in a cult, or that's, if you have a whole program and all of that to help
I
people
do. I
to
have books. I have courses for mental health professionals. But right now, just want really, I want people to take their head out of the sand if they're just trying to pretend it's going to just be normal next year or during the midterms or
Mm,
2028, because I don't think that they're going to allow a free and fair election
we don't
to
either.
happen if we're not really doing everything in our power to assert our will. And furthermore, I just want to say Americans' DNA is for free speech.
Yes.
Yay, Jimmy Kimmel. And we're not Soviets that
Right.
were raised under the Tsar and Stalin and Putin and all of that. We know we fought World War II against the Nazis. We
Mhm.
don't want the Nazis to take over the United States and the Christian dominionists locking arms with them. No, no, no. So let's build community locally, and
Mhm.
depending on our sphere of influence, we can expand the reach, but let's elevate former members. Let's get them out of the closet to speak and say, "Yep, it happened to me. I was a Mormon and now I'm not." Like, I love Denver. He said they didn't like it when I wanted to do a marriage,
Yeah.
outside the Mormons. It's like, yeah,
It's right. And he's
Republican congressman. Thank you, Denver.
yes, he was basically thrown out of Congress, voted out because he performed a same-sex interracial marriage down there in his part of Virginia, which is just outrageous in 2020 when that happened. But so as in our final moments here that I have you, uh just the top three things for people to take away from this conversation that, don't let them get away with saying that Charlie Kirk was just some mainstream Christian guy. He's not. They're part of a very nefarious Christian dominionist, new apostolic reform movement that wants to influence our government and basically turn us into Gilead. But how do people, like, three things that people can take away from this conversation as they navigate these very precarious times that we're in?
Just understand we're in psychological warfare. Putin and Russia recruited Donald Trump in the 80s. We know that. A lot of people still are in denial, and it's like the evidence is overwhelming. But the key thing is understand how the mind works, how social psychology works. And that's why I have a podcast and I live stream. And I'm just trying to share the knowledge. And seriously, we can win, but we have to be able to articulate this is what's ethical: informed consent. Lying, withholding vital information, distorting it for propaganda is not okay. We want ethical leadership that says what they're going to do and then does it. We don't want pathological liars who've lied 40,000 plus times and is basically demented. This UN thing was ridiculous. So what I want to say is there's hope. We need to join together. We need to support people like yourself who are influencers, who've proven that you are not going to just cower when they're threatening, we're going to come after you. It's like, come on.
That's right.
Bring it on.
That's right.
Because people are going to leave this cult.
Oh,
they are.
That's the hope that the fever can be broken. You may not get all of them, but
it's breaking. They're
Yes.
trying real hard to make him into a Kirk into a saint, and he is anything but.
Right.
And there's still real questions about who shot him. In my opinion, everything that I've seen is really questionable.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of that part, the fact they're trying to lionize someone who has such a controversial, to say the least, legacy here. We were quoting a pastor from Alpha Street Baptist Church who said, how you die does not absolve you from how you lived. And I think that is a really, really important thing to remember as we push back against the propaganda about Charlie Kirk and
we need
Turning
to
Point.
promote peaceful demonstrations and not more violence, because that will give them excuses to double down with violence.
That's
and
exactly
we know
right.
most right-wing extremists, 75% or more, were white male right-wingers.
Well, they don't want you to know that. They scrubbed that report from the DHS website because they want to control information.
But we know it. We have the documents. We have the
right.
proof. And really, we need evidence. We really need substance. Science matters. Experts matter.
Absolutely. Well, as we say here at the Seneca Project, American girls never back down, and we won't today nor tomorrow. Dr. Stephen Hassan, thank you so much for your time today. Folks, if you want to check him out, go to his website, freedomofmind.org, I believe. Yes?
It's freedomofmind.com, but check me out on Substack. And
yes.
Really, we have an ex-Mormon on this next week's podcast. We rebranded it, by the way. It's Cult, Culture, and Coercion now.
Oh, that's pretty good. We like that. We all like a good alliteration around here.
Exactly. That's what my people were like. This will work. And I'm like, actually, I like it. Thanks.
That's
Let's
great.
do it.
Thank you, Dr.
Tara.
Hassan. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
He is so knowledgeable, and his personal story is just nutso. Like what he went through in the Moonies, how he got out, and what motivated him to become an expert. And he's one of the foremost experts on cults. And you'd be surprised how many cults there are in this country and how many cults there are around the world. But there's always a through line. There's a through line of what brings the type of people into these cults, and he's got the number. And his bite model, which is behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions, is really, really an easy digestible way of kind of recognizing when things are very cultish. Well, folks, we got to talk about it. James Comey, indicted on some trumped up bullshit charges. The news broke just before we came on air tonight. If you're just joining us, and you know, I'm not surprised. I was surprised it took this long, but the statute of limitations is running out on what they're trying to charge him with. They're trying to charge him with making false statements to Congress. This is all a bunch of bullshit, as we know. We all know this. This is unprecedented also, by the way, folks. Unprecedented. We saw last week Donald Trump sent a tweet, which, whether it was on purpose or by accident, to Pam Bondi, bitching and complaining about how come she hasn't gone after his enemies. Comey, Adam Schiff, Letitia James, she's probably going to be next. Let's just face it here. And it got taken down, but people saw it. And we know that this is not news. On November 6th of last year, Politico did a story that outlined Donald Trump's enemies list, basically his retribution list. On November 6th last year, Trump has been talking about this forever. So I don't understand why the American people are so shocked that he's actually doing this. He has put his minions in place to do exactly this. You think that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are in their positions because they're qualified and that they're the best people? No, they're there because they will do exactly this. The timeline on this. Last week, the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is where this is taking place, this is not far from where I live here in Northern Virginia, Alexandria is where the federal courthouse is. And so, the Eastern District of Virginia is like the Southern equivalent of the Southern District of New York. This is where a lot of terrorism cases and like big political corruption cases and things, that's where they originate. Southern District and Eastern District of Virginia, Southern District of New York and Virginia. So, the U.S. attorney there basically was forced out because he refused to bring these charges. He was like, I'm not doing this. There was all this political pressure from the DOJ, thus the White House, because they're one and the same now. There is no separation. And he said, I'm not doing it. So they were like, well, you're fired. And he's like, whatever, I'm out. So he left. And Donald Trump installed this new woman who is an Alina Habba. It's Alina Habba, but blonde. Okay. She was also on his defense team when he was going through his court cases with Alina Habba, who lost every case she was ever involved in because she's like a parking garage lawyer. This one's like a real estate attorney or something. She has no experience at this level, but that's not what she's there for. She's there as the figurehead to do Trump's bidding with bullshit like this. Now, I'm pretty confident that James Comey is not going to get convicted or end up in prison because this still has to go through a jury. But the nightmare that he has to go through is kind of the point, I think. They just want to inflict pain. This is part of the retribution tour. Now, I know there are a lot of emotions about James Comey. I get it. A lot of people are like, fuck that guy. He cost Hillary Clinton the election in 2016. Listen, maybe not. He certainly didn't help the situation. He didn't handle that well, okay? But he wasn't corrupt. He might have made some political mistakes, may have gotten himself a little, feeling himself a little too much, but come on, okay? This guy was a public servant. He served his country honorably in the FBI as a law enforcement officer. And there was, he doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve this. And because he would not bend the knee to Donald Trump in the first term, That's why he's going after him, because Comey also was involved in the Russian investigation, because the FBI was looking into legitimate Russian interference in the 2016 election. And he wouldn't bow to Trump. So he's had a bug up his ass about James Comey for years, and he has finally, now he gets to exact his revenge. That's all this is about. Same thing with John Bolton, same thing with Jack Smith, the same thing with the FBI purging the agents that worked on the January 6th cases, the same thing with the US attorneys that worked on those cases. All of this is a purge of anyone that Donald Trump perceived as an enemy. This isn't how democracies work, folks. Not. This is not. And I swear to God, if people do not, if the Democrats do not make a bigger deal about this, about how could you imagine, just substitute the names, take out Donald Trump and insert Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden. If they had done a fraction of this, just put out the tweets that he put out, these are like impeachable offenses in a normal political environment. So I don't, this the idea that James Comey gave false testimony to Congress, that these aren't trumped up charges, is just nuts. And people need to take that stand and push back against it. I feel bad for Comey. I mean, his daughter got fired from her job at the DOJ. She was a top prosecutor on the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein stuff. They fired her. So it's just so obvious what's happening here, and we have to call it out. We have to call it out. So this is big news. I think part of the reason why they're doing it now, like I said, is there was only a couple days before the statute of limitations. I believe it was 5 years, because this testimony happened in 2020 during COVID. And the statute of limitations was coming up, so they had to either charge or not. Unfortunately, you can indict a ham sandwich is a true thing here. Doesn't take much. Same thing with the John Bolton stuff, going back and revisiting it. So it's going to be, it's not going to be fun for Comey, but I'm hoping that justice prevails here ultimately in the end. But it's not going to stop with him. And that's the problem. That's the problem. You want to talk about weaponizing the Department of Justice. Good God, it doesn't get any more obvious than this. They're coming for Tish. They're coming for Jack Smith. They're coming for all of those people as long as they have the ability to do it. And this is where elections have consequences. Truly, elections have consequences. So developing story, we'll see. But in the next couple days, this is probably going to dominate it, as well as the fact that we've got a looming government shutdown, which is probably going to happen next week, that Trump is leaning into. And this is another way for them to purge the federal government. But before I get into the shutdown stuff, we got to talk about what happened on Monday. This has been a crazy week, and Donald Trump has been like on a rampage. And on Monday, I would say this was another example of the war on women and what we've been warning about here at Seneca. Why we started it, because the assault on our rights transcends party lines, because whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter if you're bleeding out in the parking lot, or if you need reproductive care, or if you need a procedure done, or if you need certain pills to help your miscarriage. It doesn't matter who the hell you voted for, because these draconian laws and these policies that they're trying to push against women apply to us all. Well, I'm sure by now everybody has seen the infamous Tylenol causes autism, so don't take Tylenol nutso press conference that he had on Monday. I know we talked about it on our Wednesday show on Over It, but I thought it was important for our audience here at the Stakes, because for us, this strikes to the heart of what we do at Seneca when it comes to advocating for women. And Donald Trump putting this quackery, this medical quackery out there, saying that it's what he believes and what, don't take Tylenol and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what are you doing? Women are under enough stress and have enough anxiety as just women in this country, but then pregnant women on top of it, it's a lot. And then to muddy the waters like this, it's irresponsible. It's going to get people killed. And shame on anyone that was standing next to Donald Trump. I said this today on MSNBC. The clip is up. You can see we were on with my good friend Dr. Vin Gupta, who we had on over it on Wednesday. And I did not know until a couple minutes before today that we were going to be on air together. If you did not see that interview, please go check it out over at Mayday Network, and follow Dr. Vin Gupta. He is a national treasure, a trusted voice, triple board certified, and he's a public advocate, and he still works as a doctor. He's a pulmonologist, but he still works in ICU units, and an Air Force veteran, by the way. Trusted voices are important, and he's one of them. But we were on together talking about this, and I'm like, what are we doing? Are we going to criminalize pregnancy? Because that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. Criminalizing pregnancy. And when women, when women have complications, which happens all the time, they need to know that they are going to get the proper care. They need to know that the medical care that they're getting is based on science, not junk science quackery. I just don't know how else to describe it, because that's what it is. And this war on women, it's multifaceted, and this is just another one. There is more news today. Couple headlines today. Mifepristone, which is the oral abortion pill that a lot of women rely on, that has been proven to be safe and effective. It's under attack again. They're coming for the Comstock Act, which will not allow it to be mailed. A lot of women, that's like 60% of early term abortions are done this way. And also it's used for miscarriages. And some right-wing group that was one of the architects of Project 2025 put out this bogus study saying that mifepristone isn't safe and it needs to be studied some more. No, it doesn't. Okay? No, it doesn't. And the fact that this is out there again, and that they're gunning for this is the way that they ban abortion. This is how they do a national abortion ban. It was very frustrating for us during the election that that a lot of women didn't believe that Donald Trump would ban abortion. They believed a lot of the other stuff in Project 2025, but they're like, but he said he's not going to do that. We're like, first of all, he's a liar. Why would you believe that? Second of all, what do you mean? This has been a fever dream of the right. You want to talk about the Opus Dei and the Christian evangelical movement and all of that, and influencing the government and have to be more Christian. This was the main driver of this for 50 years. 50 years. And they've never had the levers of power accessible to them the way they do now, all the way up to the Supreme Court, to make it happen. So you think they're going to stop there? No, they're not. So the news today, I think, Mal, do we have the clip from Dana Bash on CNN?
A widely used abortion pill is being put under the microscope of the FDA. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the agency is reviewing the safety and efficacy of the drug mifepristone. Now, it's been shown over decades to only have a major complication rate of less than 1% and has the backing of major medical associations. Anti-abortion advocates claim otherwise, and many Republicans want its distribution restricted. The case went before the Supreme Court last year, and while they didn't block the drug's availability, they left the door open to future regulations. Now, critics say this review is more about politics than science.
Yep, that is correct. And I'm glad that CNN did the story. I'm glad that we're starting to see more reports on what's actually happening. And there were doctors on all day talking about how this is just not scientific. It's not scientific. It's not in accordance with medical standards, and that it is a political power play again, it's a war on women. And this leads to more news today about Trump's popularity amongst women. There's a huge gender gap happening. Now, the majority of women did not vote for Donald Trump. The majority of white women did. So I'm just going to leave that there. Women of color did their job, but white women, he's coming for you too. Okay? Like, I don't know what it's going to take for them. But the polling right now, we could put that up. There's a story about also how Planned Parenthood is now
victim
stopping
of the chaos
Yeah, here it
caused
is.
by the Trump administration's policies, reproductive services in Wisconsin. Planned Parenthood is pausing abortions because it's about to lose Medicaid funding under Trump's tax and spending bill. And that's happening as a new poll shows the president's approval rating is much lower among women, a dismal 35%, with a strong majority, 62% of Americans overall, supporting legal abortions.
So there you have it. The people are starting to pay attention. They're going, wait, hold on, that's not what we voted for. What do you mean? What do you mean? And what's happening to Planned Parenthood, which Republicans have been trying to defund for years, they pretty much have through the Medicaid cuts in the big, beautiful betrayal bill, which is starting now to have impacts on people because they're trying to sell it and they're rebranding it something else because a lot of the worst parts of it don't kick in until after the midterms, but rural hospitals and companies, they're all preparing, healthcare companies, they're preparing for this. And one of the big fights that's going on right now in Congress is the end of the fiscal year and the government shutdown that's looming. September 30th is the last day of the fiscal year for the federal government, and it's not funded. And we do this dance every year. We haven't had the appropriations bills and like a proper funding sequence, I think, since Bill Clinton. This has been like going on forever. They always do this, and they, run the government by continuing resolution and all this. It's a mess. It's a mess. But now it's a political power play. And because the Democrats want a lot of the healthcare funding that was stripped in the budget bill, they want that restored. And Republicans are going, no. So you want to talk about a simple message. Again, Republicans are taking your healthcare away. Republicans are taking cancer research, cancer care from kids. Republicans are closing rural hospitals. This is on them. Republicans are in charge. You see Donald Trump out here trying to blame Democrats already, that it's the Democrats' fault the government shuts down. How the hell is that the case? Last time I checked, Republicans are in charge of everything. When you're in charge, you take the blame. So Democrats, please, for the love of God, do not fall into this trap. Do not fall into this trap. Do not. The Republicans are not good faith negotiators here. So put your foot down, and people are going to want someone to blame. Stop letting them set the narrative. Tell the people the truth. That's what we do here. You've got to tell people the truth about what's going on. And not only that, with the healthcare aspect of this, which impacts everybody every day, healthcare premiums are going to go up. They're trying to dismantle the Obamacare marketplaces. This is like a pending disaster in the healthcare space, one of many. But people need to understand that they're also going to use this shutdown to mass fire a lot of people. A lot of the Doge folks that were laid off were basically paid to the end of the year. They were just sent home. But they're like, well, we'll pay you to the end of the year. The end of the year is September 30th. And in the past, when this has happened with government shutdowns, they usually furlough non-essential workers. And then they bring them back and they pay them retroactively. That doesn't look like that's going to happen this time. And that is going to wreak economic havoc. Doge has already done that. The tariffs have already done that. Now this, Democrats, damn it, you better message this. This is the Republicans' American carnage. This is the American carnage, and it's inflicted by them. It's their way of getting back at any of those, any of the fat that they think is still in the federal government, as if Doge didn't do enough damage. They're using this now because they don't have to bring them back. Now, there is some question, because I remember this as a Hill staffer, and the appropriations process would make my eyes roll over. I was the comms person. God bless our legislative staff, because this was usually their deal. But I remember some of these arguments about what was considered essential, what wasn't. Are they going to pass funding to keep these jobs? And Republicans would think well, we can get rid of some of these positions. If they're not essential, why do we have them in the first place? And it's it's not that simple. Okay. It's really not that simple. But there is some argument about if they do try to mass fire people, how that's going to work, because those jobs are already appropriated by the government. So there's some question here about the constitutionality of them doing this, but not like that will stop them. In the meantime, what happens to those workers and their livelihoods? How do they pay their mortgage? How do they pay their kids' college tuition? How do they make their rent payments, their car payments? You know, it's a cascading effect. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. But Republicans are to blame. Republicans, not Democrats. This is where Democrats can use the excuse that we're not in power. Okay? This is where that applies. It's not on them. Republicans are in power. Let them figure it out. Democrats need to explain, this is what we're fighting for. This is what we're not willing to compromise on for our constituents and what's in the best interest of the American people. If Republicans want to meet us halfway on this, great. If not, that's on you. Y'all figure it out. I mean, it's just as simple as that. You cannot bring a wiffle ball bat to a political gunfight. You just can't. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. Come on, you guys. Don't mess this up. Do not. What else are we talking about? Oh, my God. Speaking of messing it up.
Democrats are going to be blamed and the Republicans are going to be blamed. I actually think the president would be blamed. If there is a shutdown, and it's not going to be a horrible shutdown because, as you know, things will sort of keep
Well, there's a partial shutdown, right?
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the president of the United States. He's the one that has to get people together.
That was Donald Trump a few years ago when he wasn't president, reminding folks that the president should get the blame. The party in power should get the blame for a government shutdown. But I guess he had a change of heart now. I mean, being a hypocrite is is par for the course for these people. But that's what Donald Trump said before. So I hope other people play that clip when they're interviewing Republicans that are trying to blame Democrats for the government shutdown. I mean, maybe maybe we'll get an early Christmas miracle and there won't be a shutdown. But I suspect that they want this shutdown to happen so that they can get rid of more. They can wreak more havoc in the federal government, because that's the bigger picture here. And then blame Democrats for it. Like, don't fall for the okie doke, please, please. Also, as I said earlier in the show, if you're just joining us, in the chat, I know our chats, I can't really see our chat today because I'm by myself, but Mal can see it. Put in some bright spot stories in the chat so that we can keep ourselves lifted up and keep ourselves encouraged, because I'm going to have a couple bright spot stories at the end of the show tonight. But I would love to hear from you guys, something that's a bright spot. If it's not a direct story, something that's a bright spot for you. We need to focus on things that bring us joy. So put those in the chat. One other thing about war on women. Yes, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth now is terminating this really, really important advisory group that focuses on recruiting and retaining women. And he's calling it a divisive agenda. He's basically getting rid of this. There is a military term for it that I don't know because I'm not military. But this is, again, an assault on women serving in our military. He has the audacity to talk about women being DEI hires, or that women aren't good enough, or, and this is the guy that couldn't do a freaking pull-up. Remember that? Dakowitz. That's right. That's what it's called. Thank you, Mal. Mal's a military wife, so she gets it. This is a Defense Advisory Committee on women in the services. And again, why are you coming for this, Pete Hegseth? Why? Because they don't want women in positions of power. It's another example of war on women. Why? Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who's also on our advisory board, in her book Strongman, she talks about how one of the hallmarks of authoritarian states is to come after women because they see women having equality and being free as enemies of the state. Here's another perfect example of that. Freaking Hegseth. He's got some nerve. I just can't with these people. I really cannot. Also, Pete Hegseth is doing something weird with the military. I saw the news today, you guys might have seen, that he's calling in basically all the top brass of our military generals and flag officers from all over the world to have some big confab at Quantico in Virginia. Why? No one knows why. There's some big mystery. What the hell is that about? Now, my friend.
Yeah, Katie, this is really shrouded in secrecy.
Yes,
and it is really, we can't say it is completely unprecedented, but we spent the last several hours trying to find any precedent for this and simply can't find it. The notion that the Secretary of Defense would bring potentially hundreds of general officer and flag officers from all over the world together for a meeting like this is extremely, extremely uncommon. And for a number of different reasons. For one, these are people who have really busy day jobs. So bringing them here for something is difficult, especially on such short notice. But what's really also got a lot of people scratching their heads here today, Katie, is the idea that the agenda or what he wants to speak to these men and women about seems to be such a secret. Even officials who we are speaking to who are planning to attend this event don't really know what they're coming in to talk about, Katie.
What the hell is that about? So my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Hertling, who I know from our days on at CNN together, we were contributors. He's not there anymore now, but he's amazing, wonderful. I love him. He was on MSNBC today talking about this, and he said, listen, I'm hearing from my friends who are still active duty that this is incredibly disruptive, that the rumor mill amongst the ranks is already cranked up. People are like, what the hell is this about? He said the cost of this is astronomical. The hypocrisy of these people talking about, getting rid of people's jobs and all these programs that are like really important because they want to save money, but they can waste tens of millions of dollars to bring all of these military folks to Quantico to do what? In the digital age? Why? Why? They have secure digital communications. This is not necessary. It is not necessary. He said that even though the reports are 800 or so, he said it could be well over 1,000 because a lot of these top military guys, they have advisors that travel with them. They have security details. They need to have their staff with them so they can stay in touch with their base and know what's going on at their command posts. So we're going to pull generals and admirals off their posts in the Pacific. Like what? Why? For what? In forward operating bases where there's, active, they're in theater. Like what are we doing? What is this about? It can't be anything good. Now, he said he's never heard of anything like this before. You saw the report that this is unprecedented. They have no idea what this is about at this level. They've also, Pete Hegseth has talked about trimming some of the, top heavy, what he thinks is top heavy part of the military. So are they going to like fire generals? I don't know how that works in the military, but none of this is good is all I'm going to say. It's never a good thing. And it feels very performative so that Pete Hegseth can just prove to people that he's in charge because it's theater, it's theatrics, because Donald Trump likes good TV and Pete Hegseth is a TV guy. That's why he's there, because he looks good on TV. And so I don't know. They keep doing this to our military, and they are not tokens. They should not be used as political tokens, and it's infuriating. Our military our men and women in the military deserve better. They deserve better. Pete Hegseth is a fucking embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment, and we'll have to stay tuned to see what's going to happen, especially now. Like they're supposed to be called next week, like on Tuesday or Wednesday or something. Like what like why? I don't know. But we're gonna find out though, because only the best people, only the best guys, only the best. I cannot. All right. Well, on that note, I want to end the show on some bright spots. And I got to tell you, Jimmy Kimmel is my bright spot of the week. We were all really upset about the attack on free speech, which this is not over, by the way. I mean, it's a win in the battle, but there's a greater war going on. But we will take this win. It is important for us to take this win. We were all curious about how the fact that he was brought back. We were all shocked about that, first of all. And then it was like, okay, what is he going to do when he comes back? Well, he knocked it out of the park. He was heartfelt. He was authentic. He was defiant. And he stood on truth. He stood on the principle of free speech, and he still went after Donald Trump, and they made fun of them, and he showed humility, but he never apologized, which I thought was the right thing because he had nothing to apologize for. So the Jimmy Kimmel episode here is an example of where the American people speak up and they are collectively angry and they cancel subscriptions, or they, people that are in positions of influence say, what are you doing, Disney? We're not going to do this. The righteous collective anger of the American people can move mountains. It's the RFK, it's the ripple effect, right? The ripple effect starts with a little ripple and it turns into a current that can take down mountains. This is part of that. So people should be encouraged. Be encouraged that when you speak up and you stand up, be encouraged that change can happen. So I'm glad to see that. Kudos to Jimmy Kimmel. He gets the Bright Spot Award from me this week for standing for free speech and not backing down. And we love it. So there's that. Another example. Take this, Pete Hegseth, and you people who think women can't do anything. NASA has inducted their new class of astronauts, and people who follow me know that I have an obsession with space and with NASA and rockets and astronomy. And my husband and I are like amateur astronomers. We go down to the Kennedy Space Center in Cocoa Beach a couple years in a row now to watch space launches and bring in the new year. We're obsessed, and I have been since I was a little kid and wanted to go to space camp. I'm obsessed, and I love to see that this class of astronauts inducted, out of the 10, 6 were women. And I guarantee you, they weren't freaking DEI hires. Not in this administration. I thought they got rid of all that. So I guess these women were worthy. As if we have to question that. So congratulations to all those women who are now astronauts. That is one of the coolest jobs ever. And take that, Pete Hegseth, and all of you didn't earn it. And lastly, another woman. Talk about an act of charity. So here in the state of Virginia, this woman wins $150,000 in the lottery. Apparently she used ChatGPT, I guess, to pick her numbers. So I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. But she wins $150,000 and gives it all away. She has given it all away. She's given it to $50,000 each to 3 different charities. I think one is a military charity. Another one is that helps military families in need, which they should never be in need, which is crazy. But $50,000 to that, $50,000 to a food bank, and $50,000 to another something else. I don't remember the third one, but good for her. Good for you. There are still good people here in this world that will help other people. Like Dr. Hassan said earlier, there are more of us than there are of them. And that's No Kings is back. Speaking of the righteous anger of the American people, October 18th, another mass protest across the country. October 18th, Seneca Project is partnering again with Indivisible. We will be spreading the word, hoping folks will sponsor protests in their towns because, the No Kings thing still applies. And now there's a war on free speech. We're not doing this. The American people need to speak up. So we will continue to promote that, but mark your calendars if you can do it. October 18th, we'll be back out in the streets again saying, not no, but hell no. We are America. We don't do kings. All right, folks. On that note, let me see. Wait, hold on. Before I say, let me see. Did anybody put any bright spots in there in the chat? I want to highlight it if we can before we end the show. While Mal looks for one, Kimmel was theirs. Okay, what else have we got? I will say another little bright spot for me. So it's the end of September and my hummingbirds are getting ready to leave and do their annual journey down south. Usually they go to Mexico. Anyone who doesn't know the journey that hummingbirds go through, it is unbelievable. It's amazing. They travel thousands of miles across the Gulf of Mexico to get from stateside in the US to get to Mexico, and they make it. And so, but they have to fuel up. And so our hummingbirds are getting ready to go, and we name our hummingbirds. There's Harper, Hannah, and there's Harper, Hannah, and oh my God, Haley. And so they're buzzing around And my hummingbird today literally came within a foot of me. I could feel the air from the wings and hear the buzz. I couldn't believe it. They say that they scope you. They know their people. So that was another bright spot for me. These are the little things that make me happy. So my hummingbirds were buzzing me, and then they're going to leave soon. So, but they come back every year. So that's another bright spot for me. Okay, what do we have? I should have my glasses, Mal. I can't read that. Dickerson Designs. Okay. Everything Rosie's 50th birthday today. Happy birthday. Welcome. Welcome. As you all know, I crossed the threshold on September 9th. I'm still processing that, but everybody says the 50s are great. So happy 50th birthday to Everything Rosie, who we see all the time in our chat. You're one of our loyal followers and supporters. So happy 50th birthday to you. Heather Cooper, another loyal Seneca follower and watcher and supporter. My husband and I just became empty nesters. Okay, listen, live it. A bunch of folks at this age now, some of my friends, which is crazy to me that they're empty nesters now, they say, hey, this is the next chapter in your life. So, Heather, you got to tell us what's the first thing you and your husband are going to do now that you're empty nesters. Live it up. Live it up. All right. Well, thank you guys for letting me know what some of your bright spots are. Stay encouraged. We are out here fighting the good fight, and we will take the wins as we get them. Stay encouraged. And if you want to support, we have a new video coming out, so be on the lookout for that. And, last shameless plug before we go. I am officially a TED Talk speaker. I did a TED Talk earlier this summer. It finally went through approval, and it is live as we speak right now. It just went live before we came on air tonight. I'm going to promote it starting tomorrow, but I'm very excited about my TED Talk. The world can finally see it. It's called Stand Up or Stand By. Is moral courage the revolution we need? I encourage you guys to go over to the TEDx YouTube. You can put in my name. It'll come up. But I will promote it. I'm pretty proud of it. It's pretty cool. It's a little surreal that I'm like a TEDx talk person now, but I am. And I hope that people are touched by my talk and that it makes a difference and it encourages people to stand up and not stand by. So thank you guys. Thank you for your support of Seneca. Michelle will be back. We'll see you guys on Saturday for our coffee and conversation over it at 10 a.m. on Saturday. And we'll be back next week for the stakes.